life is much like manna. I'm talking about the manna that fed the Israelites in the wilderness. You remember in the story of the wilderness that the Israelites, they could do two things with manna. They could either eat the manna or they could allow it to rot on the ground. They could eat it or they could waste it. But what they could not do was save it or preserve it, right? Well, similarly, you can spend this afternoon or you can waste it. But you cannot save this afternoon or preserve it. You cannot put this afternoon in a bottle and put it on the shelf and pull it out sometime in the future and spend it later. You can't do that. Now, money is not like manna. You know, a man or a woman, you know, they can save their income or a portion of their income for years and years and years. And with what they've saved, they can buy things with it. They can buy a house, or they can buy cars, they can buy vacations, things like that. So with money, you can do that. You don't have to spend everything that comes into your hands. You can save it. But life is not like that. Time is not like that. Time is constantly, it's like a freight train that's constantly that's racing in front of us, and you have to do with it today what you're going to do with it. If it's not spent right here, right now, it's wasted and wasted forever. Like a river that's flowing into the ocean. That water can only be used one time as it races across fertile fields or dry fields. Because once it empties itself into the briny sea, it's lost forever. So it is with this afternoon. Now, this is a sobering reality for us, and it's a sobering reality for the heroine of our story. This was a difficult reality and understanding in Esther's life, as we're about to find out. Esther is suddenly able to see the value of the day that she holds in her hand. And she also suddenly is able to see the responsibility that she's under because of that day being given to her. And it's very sobering to her. And what she finds, and what we'll find in reading this account, is that she was unprepared in how to spend it. She was unprepared for that day that she woke to. She was also ill-trained in how to spend it properly. It's my prayer that as we look at this today, that you'll come to find and see the value of the day that you hold in your hand today. That you'll come to see the value of this afternoon, of this week, of this year, of this period in your life, this time that we live in. Okay? And I know that for many of us, we're also, like Esther, unprepared and ill-trained in how to spend it. But I do think that by looking at this exchange that she had with her uncle, Mordecai, that there's much we can learn and much that can prepare us and train us for this afternoon, this evening, tomorrow, and the balance of our lives. Okay? The first point I want you to see in here comes from the first part of verse 13, or comes from the verse 13, and that is that security is an illusion. Look at me again at verse 13, and I'll give you some context after I read it. It says, Then Mordecai told them to reply to Esther. And he said, Do not imagine that you in the king's palace can escape any more than all the Jews. Now, let me just give you a quick context about the whole story. By the way, the story of Esther is one of the better written stories in the Bible. It's a very well written tale, very easy to read in one sitting, and I encourage all of you to do it. The basic story of Esther is this, that the people of Israel were in bondage in the Persian Empire, and the king of Persia at the time was a king named Ahasuerus. And Ahasuerus had a wife, and his wife's name, the queen of Persia, was Vashti. And one night, Ahasuerus had a party, and he got drunk, and he had a lot of his friends with him, and they got drunk. And he said, in the midst of this party and all this festivity, he said, Go get my wife, and have her come in here and dance for me and for all of my friends. And Vashti, being a woman, and not liking that, and being his wife, said, No. I'm not going to go out there and be made a spectacle for you and for all your friends while you're drunk. I'm not going to do that. Well, this made Ahasuerus very angry, the Bible says, and while he got sobered up, he decided, I'll let it go. But his advisors told him, Listen, king, you can't let it go. It's going to be seen as a sign of weakness by everybody in your staff and really throughout the whole country. And then they also said, Now listen, if you don't check your wife, wives all over the empire are going to get uppity. And this is going to be a problem. We're going to have chaos in the land. And so the king made the decision to put Vashti away, and he got rid of her. Well, he then gave the charge to his aides and to his staff to go and get together all the most beautiful maidens throughout the entire empire, that he might choose one of them. It's like The Bachelor in Persia, like the television show, basically. He basically had them collect all these women from all over the empire and bring them to him, and he would have interviews with them. Well, anyway, Esther is one of the women they chose. Esther was a woman who had both of her parents die when she was very young, and she was raised by her uncle Mordecai. And the Bible says that Esther was absolutely gorgeous. She was beautiful both in form and face and every other way. She was absolutely delightful. And when Ahasuerus saw Esther, he was smitten. And he made his choice right there, gave her the rose, so to speak. And she became his wife. She became queen of Persia. Well, anyway, one of Ahasuerus' major aides was a man named Haman. And Haman was very proud. And one day he was walking through the court, and he demanded whenever he walked by that everybody would pay obeisance to him. Everybody would pay homage to him, and they'd bow to him. Well, Mordecai, being a Jew and being somebody who had pride, he refused to bow, and it made Haman very angry. And so Haman basically put a bill through Parliament, so to speak, through court, that he would have not only Mordecai killed, but because he saw Mordecai's rebellion as a symptom of a greater problem throughout the whole Jewish people, he had a bill go through Congress, so to speak, to have all the Jewish people exterminated throughout the entire empire. And it passed. And it was being sent out to all the different capitals throughout the empire, that every Jewish person throughout the entire empire would be exterminated and killed. And Mordecai finds out about it, of course, and he goes to Esther, and he says, Esther, you are the queen of Persia. You have an audience with your husband. He can have this thing stopped. I want you to go to the king and ask him to please stop this directive, this edict. And Esther's response to her uncle is, at first she says, listen, you just can't go to the king. And if I go to the king and he has not asked for me to come to him, he has the right to have me killed. And he said, I just can't walk into the court and just approach my husband. He has to call for me. And he said, if anybody goes into the court unannounced or uninvited, if the king does not lift his golden scepter to me, I have to be killed. And I said, I'm not going to risk that. It's too dangerous. And so this was Mordecai's response to her. Okay, that's the context. So the first thing he says here in verse 13 is he says, do not imagine that you in the king's palace can escape any more than all the Jews. So the first point that he makes to his niece, the girl that he raised, Esther, this beautiful girl, queen of Persia, is, listen, security is an illusion. Did Adam and Eve find security in knowledge? Did Judas find security in 30 pieces of silver? Did Peter find security in a sword? No, no, and no. Where is security found throughout the Bible? Security is found in the lion's den, right? Security is found in the fiery furnace. Security was found on the cross. Security is found in placing your trust in God, not in yourself, and not in power or prestige or whatever means you can get to attain security. Security is found in giving up on security, fearing God and fearing nothing else. It's the idea that outside are the prisoners and inside are the free, right? There's freedom in slavery. That's the Christian axiom. Now Mordecai is asking his niece to not place her trust in the king. He's saying, please, Esther, you should know better than anybody. You saw what he did to his last wife. You cannot believe that you're safe in there because you're queen. Look how quickly he put away the other queen. Don't think you're safe in there. Don't put your trust in Mordecai. Don't put your trust in Ahasuerus.